I found that that was the instruction Prabhupada repeated most often. Of all the different instructions he repeated about raising children, the one he emphasized the most was having them rise early at 10 o'clock. And it's gone. It's just gone.
It's time to get inspired. Join us as we celebrate devotee success stories. Preaching, business, community development, leadership and personal growth, all from the point of view of Krishna consciousness. Our goal? To help you to make your life successful.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Urmila, Devi, Dasi, for coming to this conversation. I'm really excited to talk about this topic today. And the topic is, how do we help our kids go from being children to being adults in Krishna consciousness in the most effective way? Now, before we talk about the topic, I just would like to briefly introduce you. There's so many things that we could say about Urmila, but I just want to highlight a few points which I think are really relevant in this conversation. We're talking about children turning into adults. It's all about education. So if you talk about education in ISKCON, the first person that will immediately come to mind will be Urmila, certainly. I know when I joined the Hare Krishna movement, I used to get the Back to Godhead magazine, and one of the columns that I always used to look forward to reading is the one by you, Urmila, all about education and things like that. You've previously run a school for many years, which was taken over by your daughter, I believe. And so you've got experience hands-on as a teacher. You've studied a PhD in educational leadership. And not only that, but you've also got like a huge dynasty of grandchildren. And I heard that you're a grandmother, but not just a grandmother, you're a great grandmother. Yeah. You can take that both ways, and I'm sure both apply.
Yes.
So you've got a wealth of experience. And aside from that, you've also been very generous in sharing what you know from your studies as well as your experience. And I've literally been binge listening to your lectures and podcasts recently. And a lot of the topics that we're discussing today are things I've already heard you speak about. And so I'd like to just highlight them for others that may not have heard you speak on these topics. And then also to maybe go a little bit deeper into some of the subjects.
Okay.
So thank you very much for coming. And I've got
Happy to be here.
Thank you. And of course, we were also neighbors in Auckland when you stayed in Auckland when you were writing the books. And so it was a full time.
And your wife would bring me pumpkin soup and avocado sandwiches. And you let me use your Wi-Fi, which was essential to getting that service done. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely.
You fed my computer and you fed me.
And you've been feeding our kids through those books, spiritually and in their academics. So I really appreciate that. So let's start on this topic. Feel free to guide this in the direction that you feel fit. But I thought a good place to start was, Śrīla Prabhupāda gave instructions on education, and some of them might be what you call conventional, and some of them may be what you call unconventional, in the sense of they're different from what people are typically following today, whether that's the mainstream secular world or even devotees in the movement at the moment. So I thought there'd be an interesting place to start. If you could share your understanding of Prabhupada's instructions on education and like his sort of overall philosophy about education, with a particular focus on as the children are entering the teenage years and becoming adults.
All right. Well, let's see if I can. Yes. So I analyzed Śrīla Prabhupāda's principles of education from lectures he gave in 1976 in Mumbai There, Śrīla Prabhupāda was speaking about the brahmachari ashram, which, of course, traditionally education was a brahmachari ashram. That was, I think we may sort of forget that, but Prabhupada was going back and forth between speaking about the brahmachari ashram for the young men in the temple and the gurukula for the children and adolescents, as he was describing. This was the section from the Bhagavatam, the 7th canto, chapter, which is about brahmachari. And after going through his lectures, I was able to isolate these principles of education. The first is that there's love between the guru and the disciple. That is not an official relationship, that it's a relationship of love. And Prabhupada in this lecture, he says, nobody can serve guru unless there's love. It's not an artificial thing. The brahmachari, the disciple, must have genuine love for guru. Otherwise, why should one be under the control of another person? And I don't think, if you're talking about modern education, I don't think that this principle is observed in modern education. Most schools today, the teachers it's their job. I mean, they may like the kids. They may even love some of the kids. But it's not really about a relationship of love between the teacher and student. It's the teachers there doing their job. And it's the fact that the teacher changes every year. As the child grows up, they get another teacher and another teacher.
Sometimes it changes every hour.
Sometimes it changes. And often there's little or no relationship. I mean, when I went to school, I had a few teachers where there was really a bond of love between the student and the teacher. But that was an exception. And it wasn't the general thing. All right. The next one is sense control, especially control of sex life and association between men and women. So, of course, this is not present in modern education at all. In modern education, it's especially high school and college, university, there's just rampant casual illicit sex. And the idea that this should even be controlled is not taught at all. In fact, the sex education given in most countries of the world is how to have illicit sex without disease or pregnancy. That's basically the sex education. I mean, they don't even have, in most schools, they don't even have education like how to be a good spouse and how to be a good parent. You think that sex education would include that, how to have a happy family and how to raise children nicely, but it's basically just how to have illicit sex. So that's a huge disparity between Prabhupada's teachings and modern education. Then worship of the Lord and Guru. So in most of the world, God is absent from government schools. And certainly people are not worshiping their teacher. I mean, in some places where it's still, things are very traditional, like say Indonesia, you will find a lot of respect between the student and the teacher. But in general, we don't see that. Then rising early, attending mangalarati. I mean, a lot of schools start at 7 o'clock in the morning, 7:30. And so kids have certainly got to be up by 6. But usually it's wake up, rush out the door. When I've been even at devotee homes where the kids are going to regular schools and the kids may be getting up at 5:30, but it's all just rush, get dressed, put your clothes on, take a bath, get something to eat and get out the door and you have your homework done. And it's like, at most, they'll go in front of the family altar and offer obeisances. But there's very rarely, I mean, I've been at a few devotee homes where their kids are in regular school and the kids actually have some kind of morning program early in the morning, but that's definitely the exception. And of course, in education in the world in general, there'll often be an assembly in the morning. There'll be some concept of starting out the day by focusing your consciousness on higher values. So something like that in most school systems. No nonsense talk, Prabhupada said, especially one should not talk politics. I think this is such a problem in our Hare Krishna movement among the adults. People just talking, bad-mouthing other devotees and fighting about ridiculous theological things that nobody should bother with. And we're spreading. And this sort of prajalpa and having discussions that are instead of vada or jalpa and vikanda is so prevalent among the devotees that it's kind of hard to have this as a principle for our schools. I'd say in the education world in general, this isn't even a concept. I mean, there is a concept of no bullying. So there is a no bullying concept. The idea of just talking about rubbish material things as being a not good idea, bad mouthing, criticism, causing factions. I mean, it's somewhat there in the world. Studying the Vedas, especially the Bhagavatam. So, of course, this is not there in most educational systems. That in most of the modern world, at least the government-run schools or secular schools, and if they're looking at scripture, they're looking at scripture from a detached academic perspective. They're studying about religion. To offer obeisances, to offer respects to God, again. Even like etiquette in the school is not prevalent in most modern educational systems. Simplicity of life. So again, I don't think that's very prevalent. In fact, a lot of the idea of modern education is how one can be a big sense enjoyer in the world. That's just a lot of the principle of modern education is you're a success if you have a luxurious life. Now, there is some idea, even in modern education, that a person who sacrifices for the good of the world is a successful person. A person who uses their wealth and stuff for the good of the world is a successful person. So there is some of that. Begging and giving to guru. There is a little of this in modern schools. So modern schools are run by taxes or by tuition, but most schools also have some fundraising programs, and the children are sometimes involved with that, like bake sales or children going door to door selling this or that for the benefit of the school. So you do see that in modern education. Not so much, but you do see it. Chanting Hare Krishna, as Prabhupada gives that as the main principle, of course. There, again, in modern education, there is a moving towards an interest in meditation. So there are more and more schools, even secular schools, that are trying to bring some sort of meditative practice into the school. And then, of course, Christians who think that this is an Eastern religion will sometimes counter it and so forth, but there is some urging in that. And then there's last two I want to look at, which are interesting, is to be expert. And so the quote here from Śrīla Prabhupāda is, not that because he has become Krishna conscious and Vaishnava, he isn't able to do anything of this material world. No. One who is Krishna conscious, he is conscious of everything, and he knows how to deal with it. That is called daksha. Not that because I have become Krishna conscious, I have no knowledge in other things. No, you must have, if not complete, to know something of everything. That is intelligence, to know something of everything and to know everything of something. That is wanted. You may be expert, a devotee. You know everything of devotional service, but you should not be callous. You know something of everything. That is called daksha. So this is something that I see, at least in our early Gurukulas in ISKCON, was very neglected. And I would say that this is a principle that Śrīla Prabhupāda teaches that also is at least an aspiration of any educational system, that children should get broad general knowledge and also become expert in a particular field. So this is something, again, that Prabhupada's giving as a principle and that I do see as a principle in almost every educational system, whether or not they achieve it, but that's their principle. And then the last one is something which I see again in our own Hare Krishna schools, we don't necessarily do. And this is from the Srimad Bhagavatam purport 276, where Prabhupada says, the brahmachari or a boy from the age of 5 years, especially from the higher caste, namely from the scholarly parents, the brahmanas, the administrative parents, the kshatriyas, or the mercantile or productive parents, the vaishyas, is trained until 25 years of age under the care of a bona fide guru or teacher, and under strict observance of discipline, he comes to understand the values of life, along with taking specific training for a livelihood. And of course, this is also a principle in modern education. And in fact, I'd say it's one of the main principles of modern education, that education is supposed to provide you with specific training for a livelihood. And this is also a good principle.
Oh, that was nice. Yes, I actually listened to those lectures by Prabhupada just in the last couple of weeks upon your recommendation.
Oh.
And so it's fresh in my mind.
Do you feel that if you have any, I don't know if you want to take the time now, but if you feel that I could improve how I pulled those principles out of those lectures, I'd be very open and happy to hear from you.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I actually took some notes myself. Let me just have a quick look. I'm pretty sure you've covered everything there.
Oh, I doubt it. But if you come up with anything that I could do to improve that, spent about 2 weeks on that.
Yeah, so interesting. There was a few points that I might add if I just look at my notes here.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just touch on some things. One of the things was that the idea of brahmacharya comes from a higher taste. I think this is an important principle. We can see that in a Hare Krishna education system, there was a lot of nasty force in some places where children, they don't want to know anything about Krishna consciousness because of that experience. So that principle of, it goes both ways. There has to be the experience and it has to be good experience. If you think, I don't want to force my kids, and then they get no experience, then you've missed something. But if you force them, so.
I think what you've hit on there, and this is something I talk about in the 4 keys of Krishna conscious education, that positive emotional experiences are essential and negative emotional experiences are going to be a big problem. So yeah, people tend to either say, well, we're going to give our kids Krishna conscious experiences, whether they like it or not. We're going to force them to have Krishna conscious experience. And then the other side said, well, we're just not going to give our kids any Krishna. And why don't you give your kids good Krishna conscious experiences? It's kind of like when people say, should I chant 2 attentive rounds or 16 inattentive rounds? It's like, what kind of a question is that? Why is that the choice? It's just such a peculiar question. It's like, why don't you try to chant 16 attentive rounds? So it's very similar. Of course, we can't possibly guarantee that our children will always have positive emotional experiences in Krishna consciousness. There's other people that interact with them that may sometimes interact with them badly, and they have their own experiences in life. But at least we should do our best to do.
Yeah.
Was there something else you got from those lectures?
There were. I just wanted to just continue that little point there for a moment, because I was listening to one of your talks where someone was asking, should we force our children to chant? And you answered, do you force your children to brush their teeth? And I thought that was quite an interesting answer.
Okay, thank you. Yes, because you do, but you don't. You don't want to force your kids to brush their teeth such that they hate brushing their teeth. And as soon as you're not around, they just put water on the toothbrush and lie to you because they hate it so much. And they're in rebellion. But you do train your children in a habit of, if you're a good parent, if you're a responsible parent, you train your children in a habit of brushing their teeth. So parents train their children in good habits. And good parents learn how to train their children in good habits in such a way that the child won't rebel against those habits the moment that they have an opportunity.
Yeah, no, I thought that was quite a good analogy that you used there. I could relate to that one.
Thank you. Any other points you got from those? Maybe you could send that to me when we're done here.
Yeah, I will. I will.
I'd like that.
One thing that he mentions is that character is more important than academic. More or less, he says that learning grammar and things like that is secondary. Most important is character. And then he goes on to talk about waking up early, attending the mangalarati. And he says that if we practice the Krishna conscious program, automatically the good habits will come, like waking early, things like that. So I thought that was interesting.
I'll tell you what my response to that is, early in the movement, the immature devotees, and I was one of them, early in the movement, the way we would interpret that sort of thing was that we didn't need to teach academics. That Prabhupada was saying that academics wasn't important. I recently read something from a Christian author he was writing about the principle of humility and not becoming offended, not being offended by anything, never taking offense. And he was saying that there's all these Christian scholars who haven't developed humility, and they may be expert in doctrine and theology, and they may even be expert in practice. But that's not the test of a Christian. The test of a Christian is their character, and especially their humility. And I think Prabhupada was making the same point, that the test of our advancement in life is our character, who we are. It's not what we know. It's who we are. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't know anything. Like Śrīla Prabhupāda, the reason that, this is so funny, the reason that in every Hare Krishna temple we say the translation to the Guru Vandana is because one time when Prabhupada introduced Guru Puja in 1974, we greet the deities, and he used to just greet the deities, and then there was a class, and then he said, where he introduced Guru Puja between greeting the deities in class. And so one time, soon after he introduced it, he sat on the Vyasa-san and said, so what is the meaning of what you're singing? And nobody knew. Prabhupada said, you should know the meaning of what you're singing. And this translated into ISKCON that in every temple we say the translation of the Guru Vandana. But Prabhupada was meaning that as a general principle, that we should understand the meaning of what we're saying. But wasn't talking about that particular song that we should say in the translation. And in other words, Prabhupada wanted us to know things. It's not that Prabhupada didn't want us to have any knowledge, but knowing things without character, it's not only useless, it's actually a disturbance. People who are very expert in the Shastra and theology and in their practice and don't have humility and Vaishnava etiquette and Vaishnava behavior are just a disturbance. So that's more important. Better you have Vaishnava etiquette and behavior and humility and you don't know anything than that you know everything and you're just obnoxious. But we would like to have both knowledge and have Vaishnava etiquette both.
Yeah, well, what I took from it, looking at it from the perspective of, let's say, someone who's thinking of starting a school, for example, what I kind of got from, because Prabhupada immediately went from character to attending mangalarati. And so what I kind of gathered from it, that if you're running a school, having a good lifestyle, sattvic lifestyle, is really a very important foundation for the education.
I saw that. My husband and I'm pretty sure we started the first non-residential school in the Hare Krishna movement in Detroit. And it was so circumstantial, really, that happened. The other school closed and we wanted a school for our kids and we couldn't find anywhere to do an ashram. And so we thought, well, we'll get the ashram together later. So, which never happened. So we had we took really seriously Prabhupada's instructions about the kids attending mangalarati. And we had a rule that if they didn't come to mangalarati that day, they couldn't attend school that day. I mean, later we ended up giving kids 3 days off a month so they can have three absences without reasons. And then they could also have absences with reasons. We would excuse kids like if there was a late night program the night before or something like that. But I really saw the value of waking up and going to mangalarati. I mean, we would get kids who had never woken up early. And if the kids never woken up early, it takes a little while for them to adjust to doing that. But I would see within 3 days, their whole character and demeanor had changed. It was so dramatic. And I saw it in every single kid who had not previously been going to mangalarati, that it gave me a lot of conviction of the value of waking up early and going to mangalarati. I mean, it was just astonishing. And I saw it with our own kids, like let's say if it was a vacation time from school, if they missed 1 day, it wasn't noticed. 2 days, it wasn't noticed. 3 days, it was noticed. Their behavior started to degrade. And it was just fascinating that something seemingly that inconsequential was what to let me wake up in the morning, and that waking up early and immediately going to a kirtan. Just, I mean, we can explain why it's so powerful, but wow, it's powerful. And I see this as something that has been lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Prabhupada gave so much emphasis on it, not just for the adults, but also when you read about instructions for the Gurukul, he says that the children should get up for mangalarati. That's an austerity. They don't need any other austerity. Let them eat, let them play. But but he really gave a lot of emphasis on that rising for mangalarati, which, yeah, as you say, it seems to have been lost.
I mean, my research, which I haven't done for many years, but many years ago, I did extensive research into, that looks so funny because it blends into your background.
I'm drinking bricks, yeah.
Drinking bricks, yeah, looks really like. I found that was the instruction Prabhupada repeated most often. Of all the different instructions he repeated about raising children, the one he emphasized the most was having them rise early or 10 o'clock. And it's gone. It's just gone.
Yeah. So
most Hare Krishna temples you visit in the world, I mean, I'm not visiting any right now, obviously, but I've been to a lot of them. Mangalarati is not well attended in most temples by the adults. And
there's more deities than there are people at Mangalarati sometimes.
In some temples, yes.
Devotees of the...
Yes. And children are not there. Children are not there. I mean, I'm in Bhaktivedanta Manor. I remember one woman would always bring her 2 children. But they were the only children there. And there were lots of children in the community. And that's typical, that there aren't children there. There aren't that many adults, and then there's no children. If you visit the people's homes, they're not usually having, I mean, you can also have a mangalarati in your home. You don't have to go to a temple. But it's very unusual. I mean, again, as I've traveled, I either stay in temple ashrams or I stay in the homes of grihastas. And how many times have I seen families who have an early program with their children? It's so rare. I mean, I remember one family, I think it was somewhere in South Africa, who had, their kids were going to government school, but they had a program every morning with their children. I mean, I don't think it was at 4:30. I think it was at more like 5:30, but it was still early. And they did an arati for their deities, and then they studied Shastra while they made breakfast. And they really studied Shastra. They had a discussion, and then they got the kids off for school. Maybe they had some japa too. They might have had like a round of japa or 5 minutes of japa or something. But that was the exception. I mean, in most families that I stayed with, the morning was just this rush, tense thing of hurry up, or the kids just sitting around on their phones, or just, that's what I'm saying.
So how can we revive this? Like, it occurred to me when you were speaking that you had a first residential school. But
first non-residential.
First non-residential school. But I guess it was still within the community where the devotees were all living close to the temple and they're able to come easily.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So most devotees are not living in those kind of communities anymore. I mean, it seems to me that having those
what we even did promote is if parents didn't want to bring their kids to Mangalarati, we would pick up the kids and bring them.
Wow.
So we had a mini school bus, and on my way to Mangalarati, I would stop by and outside of people's doors, and the parent would come out in their pajamas.
I mean, it just seems to me this is one reason amongst a few other reasons why there's a real value in having residential schools, because it just makes it that much easier to develop a culture amongst the students to come without having to depend on so many different families and people that are living in so many different places.
Yeah, but because of the child abuse that happened in residential schools, obviously children can be abused in day schools too. It's not like abuse can happen. I mean, I know devotees whose kids were abused by a regular guest in their preaching center while they were cooking for the deities. So your kids can get abused in all kinds of circumstances. It's not, but residential schools definitely provides, it's easier for people to abuse kids in a residential school.
Yeah, I understand why they don't have them now because of that.
And
it's really tough.
It's just, I can't in good faith recommend that people send their kids to a residential school because of it. And I know some excellent residential schools that haven't had any problem and are run by super responsible, wonderful, wonderful devotees. And I actually support what they're doing. At the same time, I don't think we're going to go in the direction of residential schools to solve this problem. I just don't think so. I see that the mood is against it, and for good reasons.
Mm.
One thing to keep in mind is that when Śrīla Prabhupāda was growing up, residential schools were a norm in general. And especially wealthy aristocratic people sent their kids to residential schools. It was very much a social norm. I mean, my grandfather, who I never died before I was born, but my grandfather was sent from America to Israel at the age of 8 by ship to go to a residential school. He did not come home until he was a married man with children. Mm. And you have to think there was no transcontinental telephone or anything. It was telegraph, or letters were going back and forth by ship. Imagine that. But that was normal. The concept that you would, especially for religious education, that you would send your child to a residential school. But again, that's not so much the case in the world.
Mm.
I mean, there are still obviously boarding schools, but they're going way down.
Yeah, I mean, the school I went to was a boarding school, and year by year, I think there's like 8 houses in the school. And in the beginning, 6 of them are boarding houses, and now there's like 2 that are left that are still boarding. It's just year by year, it's going down.
Yeah, it's something. Anyway, I don't see that as a solution at the present time. I think there's too much. People are too concerned, justifiably so. That doesn't, I mean, we do have good residential schools. We do. I mean, I know devotee-run residential schools that are excellent. But again, I don't see that we could say this is going to be the solution. And Prabhupada himself called it an experiment.
Right.
He said he was doing it. And I mean, we can never say what Prabhupada would have done or would do now, but I wouldn't be surprised if, knowing what happened in so many of our residential schools, not all of them, that Prabhupada would say, no, don't do this. That wouldn't surprise me. I can't say that he would say that or not, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me for him to say.
Yeah. Just wanted to change the topic slightly. You were talking about how your grandfather was sent away at the age of 8. And one of the points that came out of the lectures that I listened from you is about how in traditional society, people were given responsibility from a much younger age. And that at the time of puberty, you're considered an adult and treated as such.
Yes, that's right.
So, I mean, one of the thoughts related to what we were just talking about, that perhaps the residential schools might be something that, if it's going to be introduced, might be at an older age, where they're able to manage themselves more and not be taken advantage of as much, perhaps.
That could be, but then look at, in the society in general, residential schools generally start at 18. People go to residential. Yeah.
Oh, like college, you said.
Yes, but most colleges are residential schools in pretty much the whole world.
Right.
And they're hotbeds of illicit sex and intoxication.
Yeah, for sure.
So just kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, yeah. Be a slightly different model than I was picturing, but let's just talk about the idea of adulthood starting younger, because I mean, if you just talk about college, that's an example that nowadays the concept of growing up is that you just go to school and you do academics, maybe a little bit of sports, and you have a girlfriend, whatever. And then, but that you shouldn't take any responsibility, really. You can't drive a car yet. You can't do so many things.
Right.
And then when you hit 18, okay, then you go off to college and you just sort of party for a while and kind of learn a few things, but don't take any responsibility.
That's right.
Certainly you don't get married and have kids. And then once you leave university, then no, not yet. You're not quite mature enough yet. Now you've got to get established in your career. And so by the time you're 30, that's the stage where you start thinking, oh, maybe I should have a family.
Okay.
Whereas in traditional society, like you mentioned, Gandhi got married when he was 13.
13.
Lord Chaitanya was running his own school at the age of 14.
And he was married.
And he was married.
How do you know he was married at 14?
Yeah, Prabhupada, I think he was 22, but his wife was 11 when they got married. So there's definitely this is like quite a different way of doing things than we're used to in our modern society. So I was just thinking also that in contrast to this, Prabhupada, I think in that one of the quotes that you just showed, Prabhupada said that the students should go to school until the age of 25. So I'm trying to find this balance here.
No, you're the first person to bring this up. I understand 25 as being the maximum.
Right.
And like in the first canto, Prabhupada says there should be compulsory marriage for men by 24 at the latest.
By the latest, yeah.
So if we want to look at a parallel to modern education, you'd finish a master's degree by age 25, 24, 25, you could finish a master's degree. PhD, then you might be looking at age 27 or 20.
Right.
But a basic education, before industrialization, a basic education was 8th grade, which is about age 13. And most people were finished at education by 13. Like the Amish don't educate their kids beyond 14.
Right.
And then you go into an occupation and you get married. And secondary education was for people who are really going to have some kind of a higher level academic. And then college and undergrad and graduate was for a very, very, very small number. And so I see kind of a parallel there that people in general, I mean, most people don't really use much of their education beyond the 8th grade or remember it. And a lot of kids in secondary school are just goofing off.
Yeah.
And they're learning things that they don't see as relevant, that they don't use, they don't care. And like you say, in college, they're just partying. So the whole higher education system came into effect because of industrialization, mainly to get the kids out of the factories so that they would stop competing with the adults and doing the same jobs for lower wages. That's where compulsory education of the teenagers came from. And this concept of having them not taking any responsibility was because they didn't want them competing for jobs in an industrialized society with the adults. It's like people make a lot of noise about the fact that women will earn less for the same work, but that was really true for children. So when children were allowed to work, they'd be doing adult work at a fourth the pay. And so to counteract that and get them out of the job market, they were pushed into compulsory education and pushed into a thing where you're not supposed to take any adult responsibility. Now, first thing we should mention is it's not that all these kids are celibate until they're 30. I mean, that's the first, like, people talk about early marriage or we don't have early marriage. And it's like, well, does that mean you're not going to have a boyfriend or girlfriend? You know, what does that mean? And so, and you're not going to have a responsible job. So what are you going to do instead? You're going to play video games where you can pretend you're the master of the universe. So instead of becoming a master carpenter or a master chemist, you're becoming a master at some imaginary world. And those games particularly appeal to teenagers and especially to teenage boys because they're taking the natural urge that happens at puberty that I want to become a master of something. But you don't have a facility. What are you mastering? Your algebra book that just gets thrown in the rubbish bin after you get your grade back? So I see that one of the most important things we can do is start having kids do meaningful service at a very young age. I'd say even when they're 4 or 5. I mean, Krishna was doing meaningful service when he was 4. And
so by the time they have their teenage years, they're already in the move. It's not like as soon as they turn 13, okay, now you get the keys to the Lamborghini kind of thing. It's like.
Exactly. You go to a lot of modern homes and the kids, they have nothing. They don't expect it to contribute to the home in any way whatsoever. They go to school, they have their extracurricular activities, and they play. And that's all. In a traditional society, you didn't have that kind of luxury. You wouldn't have food and clothing if you did that. You had to have your kids contribute to the family. It wasn't really an option otherwise. And in Gurukula, in the traditional Gurukulas, the guru was training the children, as Prabhupada said, and it was a specific training for a livelihood, training them in practical things. I mean, you have today people with an MBA who can't make oatmeal and pasta. Seriously, I mean, remember meeting this lady. She was 29, I guess. She was finishing her MBA, and she mentioned to me, I don't know how to cook. And I said, well, you must be able to cook something. She said, no, I actually don't know how to cook. I said, can you make pasta? No. Can you make porridge? Can you make oatmeal? No. Can you make rice? No. I said, you're right, you don't have. So this is, I remember going to a grocery store, a supermarket, and asking one of the workers, where are the spices? And she looks at me like she didn't understand what I say. You know, spices. And then it's like, oh, and she takes me to the ketchup and the mustard. And I said, I guess you don't cook. And she said, no. So you have people growing up, they don't even know how to cook. They don't even know how to make pasta. I mean, like, they don't know how to clean floor. They don't know how to do laundry. And they certainly don't know how to do anything that's valuable for society. The problem is that we are not going to feel satisfied as a human being or as a soul unless we're using our nature to do something meaningful. We'll be unhappy people. We're not designed to just simply be lazy bums. That it's not our wiring. We want to do something that has meaning, that has purpose, where we can say, I've made a unique contribution according to my talents. Everyone, every human being has that urge, has that need. It's actually a need. And if it's not met in a proper way, then we'll meet it in an improper way with video games and movies, and where we're imagining that we're a hero and we're imagining we're doing. Why not give your kid an opportunity to be a real hero? Like, or I just met a devotee today, and oh yeah, I'm here at the temple for a while. I think I'll be cooking. I said, are you a good cook? I don't think I'm a good cook. I said, well, what are you good at? I don't know. I mean, he's like in his 20s. What are you good at? I don't know. I said, what gifts has Krishna given you? I'd really have to think about that. And I said, well, it's an important thing to know. I said, why do you think it's an important thing to know? And then his wife said, so you can use it in Krishna's service. I'm like, yeah. So this is the unfortunate consequence of not engaging children in meaningful service from a young age, which is one of the many unfortunate consequences of an industrialized society.
I'm just wondering, how does this connect with Prabhupada's idea of the Varnashrama college? It seems to be connected in the sense of children growing up and learning some practical skills or learning professional. But Prabhupada's vision seemed to be more like kind of going back to the farm and living on the farm. It seems quite distant from where we are.
Well, as far as farms, I brought up this one problem with industrialization. So industrialization has created a lot of circumstances that make certain aspects, not all by any means, but certain aspects of Varnashram very different. In a more agrarian society, people didn't leave home to go to work. They worked from their home, which meant that women could both be wives and mothers and have a career. It means that children could do meaningful service without having to go to a factory. So industrialization really messed up the training of children, and it really messed up the situation of women. People think that in a Vedic society, the women were just cooking, cleaning, and sewing, but that is absolutely not true. Like the gopis were going to Mathura to sell, the young gopis, to sell milk products, for example. They were businesswomen. That's why we call them cowherd girls. They were actually doing things for the family business. So it's these reasons, and I'm not going into this in depth because of time, but that I see that Śrīla Prabhupāda, in order to establish a sane society, and it was interested in rural agrarian living. And it's very ironic, as I said, industrialization is what forces women to choose between home and career. Because to have a career, you have to leave the home. And industrialization first women to choose home and not career. And now women are choosing career and not home. Mm. But an agrarian society allows women to have both home and career. So I find it very ironic. We have some contingent of devotees that think we want to have both an agrarian society and have women not have career. But one of the main purposes of having an agrarian society is it allows women to have a career without neglecting their family. It's one of the main purposes. And otherwise, women are very frustrated in society. Mm. Either they don't have a family, which is very frustrating, or they don't have a career, which is very frustrating. And when the women are frustrated, the whole society is harmed. Family falls apart. Mm. There's so many repercussions from women not being engaged properly. Women are half the population. And if they're not engaged properly, all of society suffers. The same with the children, because the children in an industrialized society don't have nearly as many opportunities for meaningful service from a young age. So the children end up getting into trouble. Mm. And the biggest criminal element is young single men. I mean, that's just statistically a fact. Women civilize men. Women have been civilizing men since the beginning of time. And women only civilize men if they're a wife. Girlfriends don't civilize men, only wives do. Mm. So the going to industrialization has caused total havoc in the society. Does that mean we can't institute a lot of varnashram principles in industrial society? No, we can't. The majority of varnashram principles can be instituted in an industrialized society, and it can be instituted in cities. We don't have to have a rural agrarian environment in order to have the vast majority, probably like 90% of varnashram principles. But it does make it harder. It does make it harder. And it particularly starts affecting the ashram part of life. Mm. When we have city life and industrialized life. Also, when Prabhupada's idea of a varnashram college, one of the main distinctions between the Varna idea of career and modern idea of career is the concept of dharma. There's Varna dharma and ashram dharma. So your being kshatriya doesn't just mean that you work in the government. It means that you learn kshatriya dharma. So you don't just gain expertise in how to pass law. You gain expertise in what is dharma. Mm. So like Prabhupada says, all these varnas are always existing. We see people who work as professors and scientists, and people are congresspersons and judges and lawyers and police officers, and people are agriculturalists and business people, and then there's craftspeople, and there's trades people and things like that. It's not that people aren't working in those areas that are delineated by the varnas, but they don't know the dharma of the varna. And the whole reason, the entire reason that Krishna has demarcated different careers into 4 categories is that the dharma of one category is adharma in another category. Mm. Profit making is dharma for a vaishya, but it's adharma for a kshatriya or a brahmana. If a brahmana or a kshatriya is doing their work to make a profit, it's irreligious. Mm. If a Vaishya is doing their work not to make a profit, it's irreligious. So it's the Kshatriya has to run into danger. That's the meaning of Abhimanyu. Abhi means toward, Manyu means fighting or even anger. They run towards danger. Think about the firefighter. Everybody's running out of the burning building, and the firefighter's running into the burning building. So that's the dharma for Kshatriya, but it's only the dharma for Kshatriya. It's a dharma for everybody else. For everybody else, you put your own oxygen mask on first. The Vaishya, if the Vaishya doesn't first take care of their own profit, the whole business fails. The Kshatriya can empty out the treasury to feed the citizens. The Vaishya should not do that. Because if the Vaishya does that, their business fails and then all of society will starve. Have to keep their business sustainable. So it's the Shudra's dharma is to be satisfied with simplicity. But that's not the dharma of the Vaishyas and the Kshatriyas. Their dharma is to expand. So a Varnashram college is not just teaching you how to make furniture, but is teaching you how to follow the dharma of a Shudra. And it's not just teaching you theology, but it's teaching you the dharma of a Brahman. And that's what's missing. And without that, people aren't happy. You're not going to be happy in your career. Even if you find a career that suits your nature, you're not going to be happy if you're not doing it according to the dharmic principles for your career.
It seems that there's a lack of understanding of these different varnas and the dharma and things like that. From Prabhupada's books, you can get a general kind of an idea. But in terms of this Varnashram college and actually training up kids with the right dharma that goes with these different varnas, it's a bit of a mystery.
Yeah, well, the last 4 years I've been working with another devotee, Rukmini Devi Dasi, not my god sister Rukmini. Her legal name is Dr. Ruchira Datta, on a book about, we're calling it Career Dharma, the Natural Art of Work. And to look at all these different things.
That sounds great. Well, I'm looking at the time.
Done. We're in our final stages.
That will be fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that because you can see that's such an important element of being settled and becoming an adult is having a proper career that suits our mentality and then being able to connect it to Krishna.
Yes.
Because we can see, I mean, this is something I picked up also when you were discussing philosophy of education. Like, what's the goal of education? Is it just that, everyone just gets any job, works at the supermarket, packing the sausages or whatever, but they just start their rounds and offer their food kind of thing? Is that the goal that we have, or is it something like a bit more aspirational,
Well, it needs to be a lot more inspirational. It's interesting. I had a doctor's appointment today, and at the hospital, one of the receptionists had beautifully handwritten, like calligraphy stuff on the wall. He was obviously a religious person that, like, see God in everyone, treat everyone with kindness. You're dealing with people going through a difficult time. Always be patient and kind with them for the glory of God. And that is Varna Dharma.
Right.
That is Varna Dharma. He is doing Shudra work. He's a receptionist. He's doing, although he's working in the medical field, he's not a Brahmana. He's an assistant to the Brahmanas. And he's saying, how can I do my work for the glory of God? How can I just name, birthday, phone number, address? That's what he's doing. What's your medical insurance number? Are you working? When's your appointment? That's what he's doing all day with person after person after person. But he's meditating on, and I looked at it. I said, this is very nice. I said, do you read it? Do you remember it? He said, oh, yeah. So that's an essential principle of Varna Dharma. That whatever you're doing, and isn't this what Krishna says? By worshiping me, any person can become perfect in doing their own work.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm conscious of the time, so I thought maybe it's a chance now just to kind of sum things up a little bit and also see what could be some practical actions that we can do given our current situation, particularly as parents. You mentioned things like having children, getting married at a young age. We talked about the lost, what we call it, the lost art of attending mangalarati, maybe. Some of these ideas, if you were to pick just a few practical ideas, another one, of course, was the meaningful engagement from a young age. These are just a few of the thoughts that come to my mind, but in your mind, what would you, in summary, say are some ideas for parents that could help them to set their children up as they become adults in Krishna consciousness?
Well, I have a seminar on the 4 keys that came from doing research into kids who were brought up in the movement. And what I came up with was having relationships of love and trust between kids and adults, and deep relationships of love and trust that went over years, so that when your kids, talks about when the kids are 16, they become your friends. But you can't do that unless you have some basic foundational thing going on there.
It goes back to that first point that you raised on your list, that the guru has to be a friend and the parents are the first gurus of the children, right?
There has to be love. When Prabhupada talks about being disciplined when they're young, he doesn't mean being harsh. And that establishing this relationship of love and trust from a very, very young age. And the other thing is to really absorb them in Shastra. That was one of the other principles from studying the Bhagavatam. A real absorption in Shastra. And I would say particularly the Leelas of Krishna. They should get to feel that Krishna is their friend. We want them to have a relationship with Krishna. We don't want them to tell them the stories officially. Like I was at a meeting of one Sunday school teachers many years ago, and their idea of the Sunday school was to get them to memorize the minutia of the stories and then regurgitate that minutia trivia on a test. And that was something that Prabhupada stopped.
Krishna Ball.
Yeah, Krishna Ball. This idea of memorizing the minutia of the Leela. So that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to enter into the emotions of the. And so we want the children to think of Krishna as their friend. We want them to be absorbed in Krishna's pastimes and Krishna's qualities. Again, not as just a memorized list of facts. And to have really some attachment for Krishna as a person. And then to engage them in meaningful service. From as young an age as possible. They should see that they have a place in the Hare Krishna movement. I mean, at the temple I'm staying now in Hillsborough, there's a history of engaging children in meaningful service at the temple. I mean, they don't have that much. There's working in the gardens, working in the kitchen, and working in the pujari room. There's a lot of kids here that get initiated young, and we have one of our main pujaris is the temple president's daughter. She's either 16 or 17, and she dresses the Radha Krishna by herself, and she's offering mangalarati. I mean, the way that her guru gets her to come to mangalarati is by having her be the pujari to offer mangalarati. And the way he gets her brother to come to mangalarati is he says, I want you to play your electric bass guitar for the mangalarati kirtan.
Well, sounds like a rockin' mangalarati, that one.
It is. And so here's this 14-year-old boy who's showing up for mangalarati every morning because he's playing the bass guitar. In other words, he has some meaningful service to do. If his guru just said, I want you to come to mangalarati every day, he might come, he might not. But I really want you to come and play the bass guitar during the kirtan. And so he's there every day. We have kids in the kitchen with their parents. We have several families that cook, parents with the kids. Their breakfast for the devotees, for the deities. It's the whole family. Mother, father, and kids are there cooking. We have at least 2 families that do that. Actually 3, at least 3 families.
Yeah, that's so important because I can see many times kids come to the temple and they're like, what am I doing here? And then they just kind of like run around outside or they hang around on their phone and And so sometimes the parents think, oh, what's the point of even coming? They're just mucking around. So they don't even come to the festivals and things.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, it's hard to say this, but it has to be said. There's an attitude of a lot of ISKCON leaders that the children are a disturbance and the teenagers are a disturbance. And it's very unfortunate, because if you get the kids to start doing meaningful service by the time they're, 8 or 9, then they're going to become the pillars of your temple as they grow up.
Mm.
I mean, it's very short-sighted. So this temple here in Hillsborough is one where the kids are welcome. They're not only welcome, they're greatly appreciated as valuable members of the community from a young age.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And they put on a lot of dramas. We have kids learning Bharatanatyam, and they'll come. Some of them live pretty far away, but at least on festival days, they'll come and they'll be doing Bharatanatyam during the morning program. Like during the kirtans, they're doing Bharatanatyam, acting out the meaning of the Sika.
Wow.
And they're doing Minasinga prayers and they're acting them out with Bharatanatyam there. And so they're coming. We need you to come to mangalarati and dance for the deities. Wow. And so this is what's happening. And so this is one place where the young people have been very involved like that. And then the last one I always mention is the thing you touched on, positive emotional experiences.
Mm. And what you just talked about are good examples of that. When you're doing something meaningful and you feel like, oh, wow, this is actually something meaningful.
Well, all the things I talked about, relationships of love and trust are going to build positive emotional experiences, right? Having a personal relationship with Krishna is going to build positive emotional experiences. Doing meaningful service is going to build positive emotional experiences.
Mm.
Also to keep in mind that you want to connect positive emotional experiences with the practice of Krishna consciousness, and you want to avoid connecting negative emotional experiences with the practice of Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
So if your child is misbehaving during a worship time or a Bhagavatam class time or a japa time, you really want to be careful with how you deal with that misbehavior, because you don't want them to associate being punished or chastised with that time of the day or with that activity or with that place.
Mm. Mm.
And it happens. We'll make it yelled at you during math class when you were 8 and so you always hate math. That's very real. I call it triggers. And we have adults who are triggered by certain temples because they were yelled at that temple by the temple president or something. So which we should be very, 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 very careful that the way that we engage our children in Krishna consciousness is with positive emotional experiences. And something I would like to add, those are the 4 keys I talk about a lot, which is based on my research. Something I'd like to add, there was the most recent Back to Godhead magazine had an article about teenagers. And I think it's also important to say that we need to give our teenagers experiences of doing adult things in the world and still being a devotee. We need to give them experiences of how to order a plane ticket or how to do shopping or how to open a bank account. We need to give them knowledge of how to function in the world and how to deal with people who aren't devotees.
Mm.
How to be a devotee inside without necessarily showing it outside, and how to get along with people in the world without internalizing their values and their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's a difficult balancing act. And we really need to give our teenagers some experience.
Yeah.
I hope this was all helpful.
It was very helpful. Yeah. And I like the way that you wrapped it up, that basically as our children are growing, they have to learn to stand on their own feet. And in the beginning, we may be kind of helping them out a little bit, but we have to give them a chance to grow up. And then eventually they'll be on their own. But I really liked the emphasis that you mentioned just at the end here about the positive experiences. I think if we keep that in the mind of all the things that we do, that will be a really good gauge for guiding every moment of what we do.
Yes,
This is
I mean,
helping them
obviously we
get the
can't do
positive
that at every
experience.
moment. I mean, life is life. Things happen.
Yeah.
And things happen beyond our control. And also we may sometimes be sick or tired or whatever. We're not perfect. I'd like to meet a perfect parent, but I haven't met one. We mess up. We're going to be sick and tired and frustrated about something else and snap at our kids. I mean, that will happen. That's reality. But we should have as a general principle that we want to associate Krishna consciousness with positive emotional experiences for the children. And we want to avoid coupling negative emotional experiences to the practices of Krishna consciousness. That should be a general thread that runs through everything that we do. Again, we're not perfect, but then we can apologize. We can say, I'm sorry I snapped at you. I have stomach ache and whatever. I mean, we can apologize. But as a general rule, it's just such an important. You don't want someone who says, and I met a second generation devotee who says, I love Krishna consciousness, but I can't chant japa because I used to be beat for not chanting nicely. And so I can't even touch japa beads. I get it. Yeah. We don't want that kind of situation. We want a situation where, yeah, Krishna consciousness is fun. It was exciting. It was fulfilling.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to end. Unless you want to add anything else, I think that's a...
Oh, just thank you for this opportunity. And it's nice to see you again, old neighbor.
Likewise. As I said, I've been associating with you a lot through hearing your classes, but it's nice to actually interact directly as well. It's wonderful to see you again.
Hopefully I'll get to Kiwi land at some point.
Yeah, I hope so. That will be wonderful. So thank you very much. I really appreciate the insight that you've given, and I'm sure that the others that have been listening will also appreciate. Someone's left a comment here just to say thank you very much. Actually, let me just have a quick look. Some of the comments are hard to understand, but basically, yeah, thank you very much for thought-provoking classes. One of the people have said, and I wholeheartedly agree. And yeah, I really appreciate that. And I look forward to more of your association and hearing more of your wisdom. And I hope that as parents, we can follow these things that you've taught to help our kids grow up to be really amazing adults.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks for listening. To find out more, go to successfulvaishnavas.com.
Whatever little service that anyone can do for Krishna is to be appreciated and celebrated.
Just give this life to Krishna.
We know that they have much more potential than they are presently using.
I went to a place of relishing the activity and letting go of the result completely.
You just associate with pure devotees. Then you shall be able to cross over the ocean of Nisan.